They say that your whole life can change in a second. For me, it took 12. 12 seconds of a phone call I shouldn't have received. 12 seconds of sounds I can't forget. 12 seconds that turned the woman I loved into a stranger I barely recognized. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about what happens after. Her name was Madison. And let me tell you this story from the beginning. I hate surprises. Always have. I'm the kind of guy who likes his routines. I set my coffee machine the night before. I drive the same route to work every morning, listen to the same radio station. I find comfort in knowing what comes next. So yeah, surprises? Not my thing. Especially not the kind that show up on your phone in the middle of a Thursday afternoon and flip your world upside down. That day started off just like any other. I'd been in my office, buried in spreadsheets, double-checking a budget report that was due the next morning. My job isn't exciting. Numbers, clients, meetings, but it's steady. It's safe. And that's how I've always liked it. No chaos, no drama. Just a desk, a to-do list, and peace. Around 2:17 p.m., I remember the time exactly because I looked at the clock when it happened. My phone buzzed. FaceTime. From Madison. Now, my wife doesn't usually FaceTime me during work hours. She might shoot a text now and then, pick up milk, or, can you let the dog out when you get home? But video calls? That's rare. My stomach tightened, just slightly. I figured maybe something was wrong with her mom. Or our beagle, Daisy. Madison adored that dog more than most people. So I answered. But it wasn't her face that popped up. Instead, I got a blurry view of what looked like a hotel ceiling. Beige, slightly stained. One of those industrial fans spinning lazily in the corner. I squinted, confused. I was about to say something, hello? When the sound hit me. And man, it hit like a freight train. There was movement. The camera must have been set down by accident, propped against something, or maybe it slipped between sheets. But the audio was clear as a bell. There was laughing, giggling. Then these noises, soft at first, then building, rhythmic, unmistakable. I froze. My body went cold, then hot, then cold again. A man's voice, low, breathless, saying things I won't repeat here. Then, just as I was trying to wrap my head around what I was hearing, I heard her. Madison, clear as day, like she was standing right beside me. God, you're so much better than Adam. That's my name. I can't even explain what happened in that moment. My mind just stopped. Like someone pulled the plug, and everything shut down. My ears were ringing. My hands went numb. I didn't hang up. I didn't speak. I just held the phone, staring at it like it was going to apologize. Or explain. Or tell me I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. It was Madison's voice. Not a recording, not some weird prank. It was her, and she sounded happy. Comfortable. Like this wasn't new. Like this was just a regular afternoon for her. I stood there, surrounded by fluorescent light and the smell of printer toner, listening to my wife tell another man how good he was. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I didn't know whether to throw the phone across the room or just curl up in the corner and disappear. The ceiling fan on the screen spun on, indifferent. I should have said something. I should have ended the call. But I couldn't. I was stuck, like someone had nailed my feet to the floor. I heard more rustling, more breathy laughter. The sounds of people tangled up in something I had no part in. And the worst part? There wasn't even a trace of guilt in her voice. No hesitation. No moment where she paused and said, "Wait, did I call someone?" Nothing. Just her, giggling like a teenager, praising some stranger while I sat miles away at a laminated desk with my wedding ring still on. I don't remember how long I stood there. Could have been a minute. Could have been 10. Eventually, I guess the call ended. Or the phone died. Or I blacked out. I honestly don't know. I just remember sliding down into my chair, staring at the screen long after it went dark. A coworker knocked on my office door a little while later, asked if I wanted to join everyone for cake in the break room. It was someone's birthday. I said no. My voice didn't sound like mine. Instead, I just sat there, surrounded by spreadsheets and silence, trying to process what had just happened. It's a strange thing, hearing your marriage end in real time. One moment you're thinking about what to cook for dinner, and the next you're listening to your wife whisper someone else's name with a kind of joy you haven't heard from her in years. That was the beginning. The moment the curtain dropped and the truth came flooding in. And it all started with one accidental phone call. Madison was always the kind of woman who could walk into a room and turn every head without trying. She had that easy kind of beauty, blonde hair that somehow always fell just right. even when she claimed she just rolled out of bed. Legs that went on forever. Eyes the color of green glass, the kind that caught the sunlight and made you forget whatever you were doing. People loved her instantly. Women wanted to be her best friend. Men tripped over themselves trying not to look too long. I used to feel proud to stand beside her, like I'd lucked out and won something I didn't deserve. But none of that mattered now. After I sat there in my office with the sound of her betrayal still echoing in my skull, I did the only thing I could manage in that moment. I started digging. I wasn't even sure why. Maybe I just needed to confirm what I already knew. Maybe I hoped it would turn out to be some kind of mistake. But deep down, I think I knew exactly what I was going to find. I opened my phone and pulled up the call log. Sure enough, there it was. A FaceTime call, outgoing, exactly when I heard everything. She'd dialed me mid-afternoon, mid-whatever you want to call it. I stared at the timestamp for a while, like maybe the numbers would tell me more than they did. Like maybe they'd give me answers I didn't want to hear out loud. And just like that, it all started to make sense. The late nights out with her friends. The sudden interest in yoga retreats. The new underwear I never saw her wear at home. All the nights she came back smelling like some unfamiliar perfume that wasn't hers. She'd always explain it away, someone else's perfume rubbed off, or it was the scent of a new lotion she'd tried at the mall. I believed it. Or maybe I just didn't want to start a fight. I guess love makes you stupid. Looking back, there were signs. 1,000 little red flags I either ignored or explained away. The way she guarded her phone like it held nuclear codes. The quick swipe of her screen any time I glanced her way. The secret of texting under the table. At the time, I chalked it up to privacy. Everyone needs their space, right? That's what she always said. But now I could see it for what it was, lies, strung together like Christmas lights. Bright enough to distract me while she built a whole second life behind my back. She was good at it, too. That's what still gets me. The way she looked me in the eyes and told me she loved me, every night. The way she'd curl up next to me on the couch, press her head to my chest, and fall asleep like nothing was wrong. She'd kiss me goodbye in the morning, smile like I was her whole world, then walk out the door and go play pretend with someone else. She wasn't just lying. She was performing. And I was the only one in the audience who didn't realize the show was fake. There was one night, not too long before the call, that sticks out. She came home late from drinks with coworkers. Said her boss had stayed too long, and she didn't want to be rude. She was tipsy, laughing, red in the cheeks. Said she missed me and wrapped her arms around my neck like we were 20 again. I remember thinking maybe she was making an effort. Maybe things were getting better. Now, I know better. That night probably wasn't drinks with coworkers. That look in her eyes wasn't love. It was guilt dressed up like affection. And I fell for it. I looked through our photo album too. Old pictures of us at the lake. Her birthday last year. That weekend in Asheville. It all looked so real. And maybe parts of it were. But now every smile felt suspicious. Every hug felt like a cover-up. And every "I love you" sounded like a well-rehearsed line from a script she'd already performed for someone else. I don't know what hurt worse, what I heard on the phone, or how normal she'd acted afterward. Like nothing happened. Like she could live two lives and never let them collide. Like I was too blind, too trusting, or too dumb to ever catch on. Turns out, she was half right. I trusted her because I loved her. Simple as that. I never imagined she'd lie to my face for months, maybe longer. I never imagined the woman I made coffee for every morning would turn out to be someone I didn't really know at all. But now I knew. And no amount of perfume, pretty smiles, or carefully chosen words was going to change that. After I sat in my truck for a while, just staring at her call log and the timestamp, I knew I wasn't going to be able to stay at work like nothing happened. I was supposed to finish a report for the finance team, but my head was somewhere else entirely. I grabbed my laptop, shut it down without saving anything, and walked out without saying a word to anyone. On the drive home, I went over 100 different versions of what I'd say to her. In some of them, I stayed calm. In others, I was shouting. In a few, I left quietly and never looked back. But every version had one thing in common. I imagined her showing remorse. I imagined a flicker of guilt, maybe even an apology. At the very least, I thought she'd have enough shame to act like she knew she did something wrong. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there for a minute. Her car was already there, parked like it always was, slightly crooked. I walked inside, half expecting to find her upstairs or on the couch. Instead, there she was in the kitchen, barefoot, hair in a bun, wearing those gray yoga pants she always claimed were her comfy pair. She was standing at the counter, pouring herself a glass of white wine, casual as anything, Like it was any other Thursday evening and not the day I found out who she really was. She didn't even flinch when I walked in. Just turned and said, "Hey babe, you're home early." That one word, babe, hit me like a slap. How do you say that to someone you just betrayed? Like nothing's changed? I stared at her for a second, unsure where to start. My heart was pounding. My hands were stiff. My mouth felt dry. I asked, "How was your shopping trip?" She blinked, then gave me a small smile. "It was fine, why?" Her voice was calm, but something flickered in her eyes. It was fast, barely there, but I caught it. A little twitch, a shift. That's the thing about living with someone for years. You learn the smallest tells. "I got a call," I said. Her smile faded just a little. She tilted her head, pretending not to understand. "A call. From you?" I said. "This afternoon. FaceTime." There it was again. The twitch. Her fingers gripped the wine glass just a bit tighter. She didn't say anything right away. Just stood there, calculating. Then she shrugged. "Oh, huh. Must have been a mistake." That's all she said. A mistake. She said hearing her tangled up with another man, clear as day, was a mistake. I felt something inside me go quiet. Not explode, not burn, just quiet. Like a fuse had gone out. I didn't yell. I didn't demand answers. I just looked at her, nodded, and turned toward the stairs. She called out, "Where are you going?" "To pack." She followed me up the stairs. I could hear her bare feet on the hardwood, fast and agitated. "You're seriously doing this?" she asked from the doorway as I pulled out my suitcase. "Over what?" "A call." I didn't answer. I just started pulling clothes from the closet. Shirts, jeans, socks. No plan, just movement. My hands shook a little, but I kept going. "That's so dramatic, Adam," she said, folding her arms. "You don't even want to talk about it?" I turned to look at her. "Talk about what?" "You called me while you were with someone else." I didn't need subtitles. She rolled her eyes. "You're jumping to conclusions," she said. "You didn't see anything." "I didn't need to," I said. "I heard enough." She took a sip of her wine, as if that would somehow calm the situation. Like we were having an argument over dinner reservations. Not our marriage imploding in real time. "You always do this," she said. "Make everything black and white. You don't listen. You just react." That's when I realized something that chilled me more than anything else. She didn't feel guilty. Not really. She felt inconvenienced. She was annoyed that I had found out, not sorry that she had done it. And worse, she still thought I might stay. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked. "You got caught, Madison. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's not a misplaced call from the salon. It's you. Lying. Hiding. Doing whatever you want while I sit at work thinking I'm married to someone who gives a damn." She didn't say anything. Just kept standing there with that half-bored, half-defensive look on her face. That's when I knew she didn't think she'd done anything that wrong. Or maybe she thought I'd accept it, forgive it, move on like nothing ever happened. That scared me, in a way. That she'd grown so comfortable in the lie, so confident in my silence, that she believed there wouldn't be consequences. I zipped up the suitcase and set it by the door. I didn't even know where I was going. A hotel, maybe. My buddy's place. Anywhere but here. She finally spoke again. "So that's it." I turned back to her. "No, that's just the beginning." And I walked out. I had barely zipped the suitcase and taken a few shirts off the hanger when she followed me upstairs. Madison wasn't shouting, but she came into the room with this air about her, like she was ready for a courtroom argument, not a real conversation. She planted herself in the doorway with her arms folded, like I was the one who needed to explain something. "You want the truth?" she said. Her voice had that sharp, mocking tone she used when she was in one of her moods. "Fine. I know about Rachel. From your office. You think you're the only one who can do things behind someone's back." I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. My hands dropped to my sides. "Rachel?" The name hit like a sucker punch, not because I was guilty, but because I knew exactly what she was trying to do. Twist the blame. Drag someone else into it. Rewrite the whole story into one where she's not the villain. Just another victim. Rachel was a coworker I got along with. Funny, smart, good at her job. We'd grab coffee sometimes when we needed a break from spreadsheets. There might have been a moment, months ago, where I thought something could happen, but nothing did. I never crossed that line. Never even came close. And Madison knew it. She'd brought Rachel up before, tossed out accusations during a fight over the dumbest thing, who forgot to buy dish soap. I told her the truth then, just like I would have told her now if there had been anything to tell. My stomach turned as I realized she wasn't just bringing Rachel up again, she was using her as some twisted justification. You cheated on me to get even for something I didn't even do? I asked, quietly. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just stunned. She scoffed. Actually scoffed. Like I was missing the point. Oh, please, she said, walking further into the room. You emotionally checked out a long time ago, Adam. Don't act surprised. I was speechless. I had no idea where this version of the story had come from. Emotionally checked out? I worked late because bills don't pay themselves. I asked how her day was, even when mine was awful. I brought home her favorite stupid-flavored sparkling water every time I went grocery shopping. But none of that mattered now, because in her mind, it was already settled. She had rewritten the story with herself as the wounded party. I was just a placeholder in her life, someone she could swap out when I stopped playing along with the fantasy she built. I leaned against the wall, trying to stay grounded. I looked at her and wondered how long she'd been waiting to play this card. How long she'd been telling herself it was okay to betray me, because in her version of the truth, she was justified. Rachel and I never had anything, I said, flatly. She raised her eyebrows like she didn't believe me, or like she didn't care. Sure, she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Just like I was shopping today. There was a silence between us. Heavy, bitter, and somehow familiar. That silence told me everything I needed to know. Madison wasn't sorry. Not even close. She thought she had won something. That she had outmaneuvered me. That because she could throw out a name from my office, everything else would be null and void. It was like watching someone commit a hit-and-run, then act like they were the ones who got hit. You hurt me, I said. And now you're trying to turn it around. She rolled her eyes again. That was her go-to when she didn't want to deal with something real. She always said I got dramatic when I confronted her with things she couldn't deny. You're being ridiculous, she said. You can't act like everything was perfect. It hasn't been for a long time. I did what I had to do. That line stuck in my chest like a nail. I did what I had to do. As if lying, sneaking around, calling me by accident while with someone else, those were survival moves. As if they were justified because she had a hard day, or because I worked late, or because I didn't comment on her new haircut fast enough. She wasn't just rewriting our marriage. She was making herself the hero of a story where I was the absent, uncaring guy, and she was just trying to feel alive again. That's the story she told herself, I guess. And maybe that's the only way she could live with it. I didn't have anything left to say after that. I picked up my suitcase, walked it downstairs, and set it by the front door. That night, I didn't go far. I slept on the couch. Madison went to our bedroom like nothing happened. I heard her humming at one point, like she was already in a better mood now that her secret was out and she'd found a way to rationalize it. She won the argument in her head. But I wasn't arguing anymore. I was done. After that night on the couch, I couldn't stop thinking about everything she said and everything she didn't say. Madison acted like the conversation was over, like we'd both gotten something off our chest, and now it was time to move on. No hard feelings. She carried on like nothing had changed. But I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. Something told me that what I'd heard that day, the call, her voice, her tone, it wasn't a one-time mistake. It felt like I had only scratched the surface. And if I didn't dig deeper, I was going to be stuck with her version of the story. The one where I was the checked-out husband and she was the misunderstood wife just trying to feel something again. I wasn't going to let her be the author of my downfall. So, I started gathering proof. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the yelling, throwing things away. I was cold, focused, like I was building a case. Because if I was going to walk away from this, I needed to know everything. I needed the truth laid bare. Not her spin, not her justifications, just the raw facts. The first place I looked was our shared iCloud account. When we first got new phones a couple of years ago, we set it up so everything backed up automatically. She never bothered to disable it, and I never had a reason to check. Until now. What I found made my stomach twist. Her messages, photos, notes, they were all there. Every picture she snapped, every message she sent, every date she added to her calendar. It was like opening a door to a second life I never knew existed. The texts were the worst. Hundreds of messages to someone named simply T. At first, it was small talk. Then things got more revealing. Compliments. Late-night plans. Details. A pattern of behavior that spanned weeks, maybe months. They met up at hotels, often in the middle of the afternoon. She'd text things like room 407 this time, or can't wait to see you again. Need this today. Need this. Like she had no second thoughts about what it meant. No pause to remember she had a husband at home who thought they were still building a life together. Then I found the photos. Not just selfies. Photos taken in hotel mirrors. Some with him. His face was never visible, but his arm was. His hand. His watch. The side of his jaw. Enough for me to know she wasn't alone. What really knocked the wind out of me, though, was a picture of her at a dinner table, smiling with two older people, his parents, I guessed from the messages. The caption read, "They love me already." That's when the full weight of it hit me. She wasn't just sneaking around behind my back. She was presenting herself as someone entirely different. They thought she was single. She had stepped into a whole new life, a whole new story, and left her wedding ring at the door like it didn't mean a thing. I didn't lose it. I didn't call her out right away. Instead, I started saving everything. Screenshots, message threads, dates, times, locations. I saved them to a folder on my own cloud account. Named it something I'd never forget, wifeistrash.pdf. Maybe childish, but it helped. It made it feel real. Like I was finally taking control of the narrative she tried to spin. She had no idea I was doing any of this. That weekend, I watched her walk around the kitchen in slippers, humming to herself while making pancakes, like she was some wholesome sitcom wife. She even asked if I wanted extra syrup. I said no. It was surreal. Living in the same house with someone who had detonated your life, and they still acted like nothing had happened. Like the only problem was my overreaction. She started to get suspicious when I went quiet. I wasn't arguing anymore. I wasn't asking questions. I wasn't demanding apologies. That's when she came at me with a different angle. "You're acting distant," she said one night while brushing her teeth. "You still mad about our talk the other day?" I shrugged. "Just tired." She watched me for a second through the mirror. I could tell she didn't buy it. But she also didn't want to push too hard. Maybe she thought her story had been enough. That I'd sulk for a while, then let it go. But she kept digging. A couple of nights later, she confronted me. Not about the cheating, but about me checking the account. "Have you been going through my phone backups?" she asked. Her arms were crossed again. That same stance, like she was ready for a fight. I didn't deny it. "Yeah," I said. I needed to know what I was really dealing with. Her face twisted up like I'd committed some unforgivable act. "You're invading my privacy. That's controlling behavior, Adam. It's not okay." I actually laughed. "You mean like calling me by accident while meeting up with someone else?" I asked. "That kind of privacy?" She had no comeback. She turned around, mumbled something about needing space, and walked out of the room. The truth is, she had a defense for everything except the truth itself. That's what made this worse than I could have ever expected. Not just the betrayal, but the arrogance, the entitlement. Like I was the one who should feel bad for uncovering it. But I didn't feel bad. I felt prepared. Madison suggested couples counseling a few days after she noticed I wasn't reacting to her like I used to. I think she thought she could get in front of the story, twist it into something that made her look like the wounded spouse, and maybe convince someone else that all of this was somehow just a communication issue. She brought it up while folding laundry, of all things. Holding a pair of my socks, she said, "Maybe we should talk to someone." I asked, "About what?" She gave me that patient, patronizing tone she used when trying to steer a conversation. "Everything. Us. The way we've been distant." Distant. That was her word for betrayal now. At first, I didn't want to go. I knew I wouldn't be able to sit across from her while she played victim and made me look like the inattentive husband who just didn't understand her needs. But I agreed. Not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I wanted to see what story she would try to sell when someone else was watching. We ended up booking a session with a therapist named Phil. He worked out of a cozy office attached to an old brick house on the edge of town. He was probably in his 60s, soft-spoken, glasses, gray beard. The kind of guy who'd seen it all and probably knew before we even sat down who was telling the truth. The first session started exactly how I expected. Madison spoke first, diving into a story that sounded almost rehearsed. She said we had drifted apart, that I was emotionally unavailable, that I buried myself in work and came home distant and tired. She said she felt unseen, unappreciated. She even mentioned how I didn't compliment her the way I used to. According to her, she had tried everything to save us but felt like I didn't care anymore. I sat there, arms crossed, staring at a spot on the rug. Phil nodded through her story, taking notes in a small notebook. He didn't interrupt. Just let her talk until her voice slowed and she glanced at me, clearly expecting me to be flustered, defensive, maybe even apologetic. Phil looked at me. "Adam," he said gently, "do you have anything you'd like to add?" I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened the folder I'd created, messages, photos, location data, and everything else she didn't know I had, and handed it to him. He took the phone and began scrolling. The silence in that room was the loudest thing I'd heard in days. Madison sat still, her expression unreadable at first. Then she leaned forward a little, trying to see the screen. Phil didn't say much. Just raised one eyebrow and asked, "Madison, would you like to respond to this?" She didn't blink for a few seconds. Then she laughed. Not a nervous chuckle. Not embarrassed. She actually laughed. "You really went full FBI on me," she said, smirking like I'd just brought her flowers instead of a pile of digital proof that she'd been building a secret life behind my back. Then she added, "Well, guess what? I did. I was with him. More than once. And yeah, I lied. But maybe you deserved it." That sentence sucked the air out of the room. I saw Phil's face shift, just slightly. His jaw tightened. He leaned back slowly, set the phone on the table, and folded his hands. "I think we're past reconciliation," he said, quiet but firm. Madison didn't say anything after that. She sat there, arms crossed, legs bouncing slightly restless, but still trying to look in control. The mask had cracked, and she knew it. I didn't speak either. There was nothing left to say. Phil asked if we wanted to schedule another session. Madison looked at me, waiting for me to decide. "No," I said. "I think I've got what I came for." We stood. I thanked Phil for his time. He gave me a look that wasn't pity, exactly. It was more like quiet understanding, like a man who'd seen this movie 100 times before and already knew how it ended. We left the office in silence. Walked to the car separately. The ride home was filled with the kind of quiet that doesn't just sit between you, it digs in. Builds walls. There was no music. No conversation. Just the sound of tires on pavement and two people who had finally run out of ways to pretend. She didn't ask what I was going to do next. I think she already knew. Back at the house, she went to the bedroom. I stayed downstairs. I opened my laptop, looked over the folder one last time, and emailed a copy to myself with the subject line, "For the record." The morning after our last counseling session, I called a lawyer. I didn't pace around or second-guess it. I didn't spend hours looking out the window like in those movie scenes. I just made the call. I'd already made my decision. That was it. The therapist didn't save anything, and Madison didn't want saving. She wanted justification. The lawyer's office was calm, professional, a place that had seen the end of plenty of marriages, and mine was just another name on a file. I sat across from a woman named Natalie. She listened more than she talked, which I appreciated. I laid everything out, what I knew, what I had, what I wanted. She looked at me and said, "You've already done most of the hard work. This won't be difficult." That was the first time in weeks I felt like something was under control. For days later, I handed Madison the envelope. I didn't plan a grand moment. I just wanted to do it plainly. I invited her to dinner, just the two of us, quiet corner booth at a place we used to like. She came in smiling, already halfway through her first glass of Pinot by the time I slid the envelope across the table. Her smile froze. I could see it unravel. First confusion, then realization. Her fingers hovered above the envelope for a second before she finally picked it up and opened it. "You're really doing this?" she asked, voice low. I nodded. "I should have done it the night you called me." That shut her up. Her mouth opened slightly, but she didn't speak. Then came the tears. Not dramatic sobs, but quiet ones. Real, for once. The kind that slide down your cheek when you realize the game's over. She dabbed her eyes with her napkin, then looked around the restaurant like someone might step in and stop it all. But no one did. I didn't flinch. I didn't comfort her. That part of me was gone. The weeks that followed were quiet. Awkward, but civil. She moved into the guest room and acted like everything was a legal formality we just had to get through. I stayed out of her way. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't check her texts. That phase of my life was over. 2 months later, we were sitting on opposite sides of a courtroom. Natalie handled everything. She was sharp, confident, and didn't waste words. She walked the judge through the facts, the confession from therapy, the messages, the backup data. She presented it without venom, just clean and simple. Madison tried to keep her expression neutral, but you could tell she was shaken. I think she expected charm to do what it always had. A smile here, a soft voice there. But courtrooms don't care about charm. They care about evidence. The judge reviewed everything quietly, his face unreadable. After a while, he gave his decision. I got the house, the car, a clean split of the savings. She didn't fight it, probably because she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. The look on her face was something I'll never forget. Like someone watching their favorite movie end in the wrong way. We left without saying a word. But that wasn't the end of it. She thought I'd never find out who the guy was. She was careful not to name him. She kept his contact under just an initial, T. But she slipped. Little things she said gave me clues. Names mentioned in passing. Times that didn't add up. Places she claimed to be that lined up a little too well with someone I'd heard about before. I had a few connections. Nothing shady, just people I'd helped in the past, favors owed. One of them worked in the same building as Madison. I asked for a quiet look around. Nothing invasive. Just ears to the ground. It didn't take long. The guy's name was Trent. Sales rep, mid-30s, flashy dresser, big talker. Known for chasing women around the office. Married women. Had a bit of a reputation. I couldn't believe she fell for someone like that. Or maybe I could, and I just didn't want to admit it. I didn't confront him at work. That would have been dumb. Too many witnesses, too many risks. But I watched. I waited. Eventually, I figured out he was seeing someone else, another woman, not Madison. A married woman whose husband was often out of town. I did my homework. Learned his routine. Where he parked. Where she lived. How late he stayed. One night, I waited outside her house. When he came out to his car, I stepped out of the shadows. He didn't even see me coming. I hit him once in the stomach, hard enough to take the air out of him, and once across the jaw. He went down fast. I dragged him behind the hedges, zip-tied his wrists, and left a folded letter in his coat pocket. Inside was everything. His name, the women he'd been with, the dates, the hotel names, and my warning. I didn't threaten him. I didn't sign it. Just facts. Enough to burn every bridge in his life. The next morning, the news was all over the local office grapevine. Someone had posted the letter anonymously to his boss. He got fired. His wife found out. Photos of him, bruised, humiliated, made the rounds. Madison never knew what happened. A few weeks went by after the court decision. Then she called. I let it ring twice before picking up. Her name still popped up on the screen, though I'd thought about changing it to don't answer. But I didn't. Part of me figured the day would come when she'd try to reach out again, and I wanted to know it was her. She asked if we could talk. Just once. No drama, she said. Just to talk. I didn't say yes right away. I told her I'd think about it. 2 days later, I called her back and agreed to meet at a diner we used to go to when we first started dating. When I walked in, she was already there. She'd picked a booth in the back, away from the windows. She looked smaller somehow. No makeup, hair pulled back, plain blue hoodie. Not the version of her I was used to. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee mug like she needed the warmth, even though it wasn't cold outside. She looked up when I approached and gave me a small smile. Hey, she said. I nodded and sat down across from her. The waitress came by and filled a mug for me without asking. She must have remembered us. I didn't ask for anything else. Neither did Madison. For a few moments, we just sat there. The sounds of clinking dishes and quiet conversation filled the space between us. Eventually, she spoke. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice softer than I remembered. I stirred my coffee with a spoon. But you did, I replied. More than once. She nodded and looked down. Her eyes were a little puffy, like she'd cried recently, or hadn't slept well in days. I thought I could fix it before it got too far, she said. But it already was. And I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't plan for any of it. It just happened. I looked at her for a long time. I didn't feel rage anymore. Not even sadness, really. What I felt was more like distance. Like she was someone I used to know, from a place I used to live. You weren't scared, I said. You were selfish. She didn't argue. Maybe for the first time in months, she just accepted the truth as it was. No defense. No clever twist. Just silence. We sat like that for a while. Not saying much. Just letting time pass, and maybe trying to understand what part of our story, if any, had been real. Eventually, she looked up again. I hope you find what you're looking for, she said. I reached for my wallet, but she put a hand up. I've got this, she said. I paused, then stood up. You already did, didn't you? She asked quietly, not really expecting an answer. I looked at her for the last time and nodded. Yeah, I said. Myself. She didn't smile. She just looked tired. Not in a way that sleep could fix. Just tired all the way through. I walked out of the diner and didn't look back. The sun was low, late afternoon, casting long shadows across the asphalt. I got in my truck, started the engine, and let it idle for a moment before pulling out onto the road. She moved to another state about 6 weeks later. I heard through a mutual friend that she wanted a fresh start. She left no forwarding address. No goodbye. The truth is, some endings don't come with fireworks or shouting or last-minute pleas at the airport. Sometimes it ends in a diner, over coffee, with no apologies that matter anymore. And that's just fine by me. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in my shoes after that phone call? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.